This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
But we did sit down today to talk about Chapter 35, the Falcon, and our symbol is the water symbol.
The waves?
The waves?
I always think of it as the watchers over the waves. I think that's the first time we saw it. But not really sure why this icon for this chapter.
Because they're sailing.
Oh, duh.
Or they will be soon.
Yeah, I was thinking of the ocean. They're not on the ocean. They're on the river.
Yeah.
So this is just really a sailing.
I forget the name of the little town.
It's
they're in Gildan somewhere?
Yeah, and it was just that port town on the edge that was maybe a little bit bigger and more prosperous.
Yeah, it's probably not on the map. I'm looking. I don't see it. So Lan just walked up on Perrin standing in the town square with a dozen dead white cloaks all around him. Right. And blood all over the place.
He and Gaul chopped them up. Well, Gaul did it without any weapons.
And says, we have to leave town right now.
And so they head right back to the inn to gather everyone up and get out.
The warder's long legs outdistanced Perrin's, and by the time he pushed through the throng outside the inn doors, Lan was already striding up the stairs, not seeming in any particular hurry. Perrin made himself walk as slowly. From the doorway behind him came grumbles about people pushing ahead of other people. Again, Orban was saying, holding his silver cup up to be refilled. Aye, very well. They lay in ambush close to the road we traveled, and an ambush I did not expect so close to Remen. Screaming, they rushed upon us from the crowding brush. In a breath, they were in our midst, their spears stabbing, slaying 2 of my best men and 1 of Gan's immediately. I knew Aiel when I saw them, and Perrin hurried up the stairs. Well, Orban knows them now. He's doubting that Orban has ever seen an Aielman in his life, until just the other day.
He's old enough to possibly have fought in the Aiel War, right?
I have no idea how. I don't know how old he is. I'll look him up. Did you find anything about him?
We just get him in these 2 chapters. We don't really get him outside. We never see him again, so there's, pretty limited information.
Yeah.
So we really don't know what else he could have been involved in. But, Fael does say he's a good fighter. He took down we'll come across it, but a couple of guys in a fight.
Yeah, he apparently got into a fight with 4 men and killed 2 of them, and the other 2 surrendered.
And I mean, he survived Gaul, which also, just surviving Gaul probably makes him a pretty good fighter.
Surviving Gaul. I like that. Voices came from behind Moraine's door. He did not want to hear what she had to say about this. He hurried past to stick his head into Loyal's room.
Lan coming back being like, Perrin killed all the white cloaks. And Moraine being like, what?
He killed a white cloak? No.
No.
All the white cloaks. Huh. So that's, Gaul killed a bunch of them, but...
Yeah.
There was a count. I don't remember.
12.
He killed 3 or 4. Perrin did.
Well, there were 12 down, and Gaul killed the majority of them, which means more than 6.
So badass.
With no weapon. So that's what I'm saying. Like, he must be a decent fighter, even if he took Gaul by surprise. And they, he sort of describes here that screaming, they rushed up in a breath. You read this, but slaying 2 of my best men and 1 of Gon's immediately. So there's 2 of them, and they probably killed 3 guys, instantly.
Yeah.
And the other 9, because there were 12 in both parties.
I kind of imagine Orban picked the fight. It doesn't say. Of course, I don't believe anything Orban says. But I just don't see 2 Aiel walking through some place where there's a town nearby, and then they just murder people indiscriminately.
Oh, I'm sure he attacked them as soon as he saw them.
Yeah,
they were able to slay 3 people immediately, even attacked and unknowing.
Right.
Yeah, and I think we hear when Perrin lets him out, he talks about how they were just walking and they stumbled upon these folks and were attacked immediately.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it.
It's after the fight.
We walked into them before I knew it, and Saren is dead, and I was caged like a fool.
And it was 12 against 2.
Yeah. Which is the same thing that happens here with the White Cloaks and Perrin, but they're prepared.
That's true. And the two Aiel killed 6
Right.
collectively. We don't know who killed how many, but
yeah. And I'm assuming as soon as Saren went down, Gaul just couldn't defend himself. You kind of, if you don't have someone to put your back against, it's very easy to get surrounded.
well, right. So there's 6 still standing and 1 Gaul. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And I'm guessing like Gaul went down, maybe it was 8 still standing in Gaul, and then there were 6 still standing.
He doesn't appear to be injured.
No.
Hmm.
No. I wonder if they just piled onto him and were like physically able to just weigh him down.
Or maybe he just surrendered. I mean, that's a thing too. In Aiel culture. Like there's a time and a place to take on the white. It's not dishonorable to lose.
Yeah, but that's only if you're touched without being like
And by an Aiel.
Yeah, he would never let the wetlanders take him guy shine.
Well, no. I mean,
Yeah.
they wouldn't know what that is, but
Right. They don't follow Jito.
yeah. And so Perrin goes up the stairs and sticks his head into Loyal's room and he says, "We're leaving."
Loyal sitting
I
on
like
like
that a
the
lot.
first good bed he's ever been on in a nice comfy chair. He's like,
Leaving?
"What?
We
Leaving?
just got here.
I like this place."
Yes, leaving. Meet us at the stable as quickly as you can and don't let anyone see you go.
I'll tell you more later. Let's go. It's the White Cloaks.
White cloaks.
Yeah.
Come on.
I mean, are there any White Cloaks left? Is there a whole garrison of them like outside the city?
I figure there's always more nearby, you know?
Where you see one,
Yeah.
there are always more.
They're like a herd animal.
Ants. You can squish them, but more keep coming. Speaking of which, we have an ant problem.
I overheard the neighbors talking about it.
This time of year, they just take refuge inside, I think, because it's so hot out.
Yeah.
And they look for, I find them in the shower because I think they're looking for water.
Really? I mean, just see them everywhere.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, we have that. We've had that in at least one other house that we lived in Portland, where it's like they're kind of everywhere, scattered about. But like if you like leave a drop of like a drink ring on your table or something, they're all over it in an hour.
Anything that's sweet, one finds it and then bonanza.
Yeah.
Yeah. You sort of get used to just like, oh, that's an ant on my arm, squish. Okay.
Yeah.
You just don't worry about it as
Just
much.
like flick them off.
Yeah. You sort of get used to just making sure everything's clean anyway.
Well, luckily, Parent still hadn't unpacked.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that in the last chapter. Oh, I like how he says, I don't seem to leave any mark behind, except the 12 bodies.
Yeah, just bodies.
Just bodies.
Perrin sneaks back, grabs his stuff, sneaks back out, and feels relieved that everybody's busy being Google-eyed over this Lord Orban.
And he's just lying his butt off about everything that happened.
Yeah.
I did write this. This feels very familiar to Winter Night to me. And then later, Loyal was like, doesn't this feel familiar to me? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, I like that. I didn't really think of it that way. I mean, Loyal does point it out, but...
It's like, them gathering their stuff in the middle of the night, meeting in the barn, fleeing.
Yeah. The ways.
Are they heading to the ways?
Well, no, but fleeing from one dangerous place to another dangerous
Sure.
place.
I love the interaction between Lan and the stableman.
Yeah. Perrin's the first to arrive at the stable, and he says, I need all these horses saddled, and the guy just looks at him. He's like, who are you?
Yeah, he's like arguing with him. He's like, really? Nah, I don't think so.
You don't look like you own that.
No.
A coin flipped through the air from behind Perrin, glinting gold in the lantern light. The stableman snagged it with one hand and bit it. Saddle them, Lan said.
Sort of reminds me of Lan's answer him.
Yeah.
2-word sentences. Get the job done. When Lan's looking at you, like, yes, sir. Whatever you say. And thanks for the gold.
Laconic Lan.
Oh, did you hear Hardcore History came out today?
No, there's a new one?
Yep.
Awesome.
The Japanese culture leading up to World War II.
Oh.
It's good.
That's an interesting subject that I can't say I know very much about.
So since you used the word laconic, I thought you were thinking of Hardcore History. The laconic Spartans he always talks about.
Yeah, it was some people, that's what their ethnicity was called. And the term changed because of the way they communicated.
Got it.
The Laconians or something like that.
Were they a Greek island city-state type folks, like the Spartans?
The Spartans
Oh, they were
are the Laconians as far as Don't take my word for gospel, guys. I'm not a... So Laconia is a region.
In Sparta?
Its capital was Sparta.
Oh, got it. So Sparta was a city-state in Laconia.
Yeah. Lacedaemonia.
Yeah, sure, I can say
That's
that.
the older... Okay. Sidetracked. Well, Bambi, they're famous for that, like, come and take them. That was a famous Spartan response to some king of Persia, Xerxes, I think. Oh, you want our weapons? That's all we have to do? Sure. Come get them.
You can take them from our cold, dead hands. Here's where Loyal says this feels like old times. Sneaking away in the night with enemies behind us and maybe enemies ahead, and danger in the air and the cold tang of adventure.
What are you talking about? I believe you are becoming to like danger. Loyal, you must be crazy.
For my book, it's I believe I am coming to like it adventuring, of course. I am. His ears gave two violent twitches, which happens. I think that's when he's lying. His ears twitch violently.
I thought it was just nervousness.
Nervousness, yeah.
I have to like it if I wish to write of it. Perrin shook his head.
So they ride to the boat?
Yeah. Party gathers, ride to the docks. Luckily, there's a captain that was planning on leaving at dawn, presumably, because he's like, yeah, sure, I'll leave a couple hours earlier.
Sure.
Pay me.
First boat out. And they're being followed by Fail.
Yes.
Because she's been following Perrin all night.
And I like also that, I'd like to believe that she's just like, who's the cute one or whatever, but she gives a concise explanation where she's just like, okay, so there's an Aes Sedai that makes Lan the warder. There's an Ogier and a farm boy.
Also, he freed Nihil, held a conversation with him, and then killed a bunch of White Cloaks.
Yeah.
So you're not a regular farm boy.
And she also mentioned when they were talking that he appeared as if he was kind of unruffled by it. Like, this kind of stuff must happen to you all the time.
Well, not all the time, but frequently enough.
Yeah. It's kind of his new life.
Yeah. Using the axe on living things. I don't know. I guess Trollocs technically count as living things.
They're alive.
Yeah.
They eat, breathe, poop, reproduce.
Yeah. Shadow Spawn, I guess. I was sort of thinking of gray men being dead. Fades is not really. I guess Fades are alive too. Sort of. That's sort of like there's this border between what's alive and real and natural and what's not.
Yeah. What do you think, guys? Are Fades alive?
They can die, so they kind of must be alive. But they are also kind of out of the pattern.
And they don't die for...
till the next sunset.
Yeah.
Unless you totally obliterate the body.
Right. They're partly outside the pattern.
Which lets them stay alive even when they're dead for a while. That's what sort of puts them in the borderland, is like you kill a Fade, but then it like has up to 24 hours before it finally dies.
Yeah.
And there's like something not alive about a Fade if it can stay alive.
Or is it? Yeah, I think it's the sunset.
It might be sunset or sunrise.
I can't remember. But that's... Yeah. Bambi's asking where we got that from. Is it Lan that says that, Sir Septon? Is that right?
I believe so. It's definitely a quote from Eye of the World.
Yeah, I think that was in Eye of the World when he kills one, and it's just kind of stumbling around, swinging its sword.
They're stubborn. They don't like to admit they're dead.
That sounds almost verbatim.
I may have read the series a few times. But we don't see that a lot in the series. It doesn't really come into play.
Not a ton.
Especially with channelers who just like obliterate the Fades. Yeah. Or once you behead something, it's kind of, even though it's not dead, it can't see where it's going.
Yeah, we see it a good amount in the first couple of books, but not so much after, especially when it's centered around channelers and everybody's powered up, so you can just behead the things and be done with it.
Right.
Although I think they still run around, right? Even if you cut off their head?
Yeah. They're like chickens. They can like stab blindly.
Yeah. Ugh. Lan pays the captain. You tether the horses between the masts.
I notice here Perrin hears their conversation about complaining about the poop they're going to clean up from the horses. It occurred to me that a lot of Perrin's advantage in managing people is he knows a lot of things they assume he can't know because he just overhears conversations.
Right.
He sees people doing things.
And he can smell their emotions.
Their emotions, yeah. We're not quite really at that point where he's doing it all the time. Mostly he's just smelling fear.
It does get there.
But it gets there, yeah. Where he's really using that ability more and more.
When Fail shows up in a second here, I noticed, and it like pricked my memory when he says she had a sharp herbal smell.
Yeah.
And that's like
her smell.
We see that over and over. Yeah, that's what she smells like to him. It made me wonder a little bit about what it is. I think she probably mentions it at some point. But as the last line was tossed ashore and seized by a dockman, a girl in narrow, divided skirts burst out of the shadows between two warehouses, a bundle in her arms, and a dark cloak streaming behind her. She leapt onto the deck just as the men at the sweeps began pushing off. Adara bustled from his place by the tiller, but she kindly set down her bundle and said briskly, "I will take passage downriver. Oh, say, as far as he's going." She nodded toward Perrin without looking at him. "I've no objections to sleeping on deck. Cold and wet do not bother me." A few minutes of bargaining followed.
Oh, as far as he's going.
I'm with that guy.
Yep.
I'm with the Wolf Brother.
He doesn't know it yet, but I'm with him.
That's a thing we should make into merch one day. This is where he notices her herbal scent.
And I wonder if I always thought that was a perfume that she kept.
Yeah, or like a bath stuff, you know?
Lots of women have their own scents.
I always found that bath stuff really funny. It's pretty much like you make a giant cup of tea in your bathtub and then you lay in it. I mean, I get it, but it's part of me thinks it's absurd.
It's like a really, really cool Trolloc cookpot.
Yeah. You're like braising yourself, essentially.
Totally.
Little white wine.
Some basting.
Yeah, Bambi, she's tough for essentially a princess. A little lower than a princess, but a princess. Offering to sleep on the deck in the rain.
She's been traveling for a while, and she's a Saldaean princess.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, her father is Davram Bashir. I'm guessing she spent a lot of time living rough in the saddle growing up.
Probably. I mean, we know she knows she's a very good rider.
Extremely good.
And she knows what she's doing with those knives.
She does. Although, Tom definitely is like, yeah, you're okay. And I think Matt snatches the knives away from her without any problem either. So,
but they're like superheroes.
Totally. Yeah. But that's sort of her level of knife skill is like, she's better than almost anyone else, but
yeah,
she can toss a knife.
A talented individual versus Batman,
Right.
I liked here that Perrin thinks for a moment he considered tossing her over the side.
He considers it a few times.
I think so.
And I think he might regret not doing it.
It only gets worse until it gets better.
Well, yeah. That's always the truth.
She does grow a lot. Everybody's saying that in the Discord. And towards the end of the series, they're able to look back and reflect on what idiots they were.
Yeah, there's definitely a severe lack of communication between the two because they both have ideas of what the relationship should be that don't match what the other one. And then there's just some misunderstandings here where he's trying to be nice and she takes them as insults.
Right, and there are the cultural differences too.
Yeah, huge.
Well, she said after a moment, I never expected my travels to take me back to Ilion so soon as this. Her voice was high, and she had a flat way of speaking, but it was not unpleasant. You are going to Ilion, are you not? He tightened his mouth. Don't sulk, she said. You left quite a mess back there. You and that Aielman between you. The uproar was just beginning when I left. You did not tell them? He said in surprise. The townsfolk think the Aielman chewed through the chain, or broke it with his bare hands. They had not decided which when I left.
And that is just one slightly bent link. I could see him doing that with his bare hands. I'm shaking my head. And she's talking about heading back to Ilion because she just was there taking the oath as a hunter of the horn.
Yeah, which was... So she's been traveling around for a few months.
Yeah, but, they are pretty far away from Ilion.
Yeah.
Unless you take the river.
She made a sound suspiciously like a giggle. Orban was quite loud in his disgust that his wounds would keep him from hunting down the Aielman personally. Perrin snorted. If he ever sees an Aiel again, he'll bloody soil himself.
Yeah.
That's likely, I think.
I mean, he may have been a decent fighter. And here's where she says, I saw him in
Johanna?
Johanna. I saw him in Johanna during the winter. He fought 4 men together, killed 2, and made the other 2 yield. So, I mean, he took on 4 guys at once and won. So he's no slouch of a fighter.
Yeah.
But
Gaul is Batman.
Right. And maybe with 12 or 6 people at his side, he was able to take him on. But by himself, no.
Yeah. Did we record anything about what we were talking about with the TV show?
No.
Oh, well, so totally out of context for audio-only people when they make the show, or if they make the show. But some of this, what I collectively call kung fu, I'm kind of looking forward to that.
The hand-to-hand fighting that goes on,
sure,
that the Aiel train in, and they train Rand and
like watching Gaul
totally
kill all those white cloaks
because they've got swords and he's just hand to throat.
Yeah, gouging their eyes out with his bare hands. Like, I don't know what he's doing.
I assume mostly just like breaking throats, snapping bones.
It's pretty hard to kill someone with your bare hands.
It is pretty hard to kill someone, especially if they're swinging a sword at you.
Yeah.
But he manages. Now, he said they were all down. Were they all dead, or were some of them down with like broken bones?
That's a good point. He did say they were all down, but when he was walking away, he said some groaned and some were still and silent. So some were dead and others were just incapacitated.
It's interesting because here he says they don't know he was involved. They think it was just the Aielmen. So if any of them survived, you would think they would say, yeah, it was Perrin too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So now I'm thinking that they're all dead, even if some of them weren't quite dead yet.
It could be. Fael points out that Orban did pick that fight that he won.
Well, yeah. Just like he picked the fight with the Aiel.
Right. Just picked the wrong one that day.
Yep. Well, that's what bullies do. They pick fights until they pick the wrong one.
Hmm.
So she talks a little bit about her ideas for where the horn is. Which,
yeah.
Of course, is super ironic because Perrin has seen it.
Right.
It's been blown. He's fought in a battle where it's been blown.
Says Orban seems to think that the horn will be in the Forest of Shadows, which is abutted right onto the 2 rivers. Some call it the Great Blackwood, apparently. And then she says she thinks that it would be somewhere in the Mountains of Mist.
Manetheren.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Manetheren? Yeah.
In passing.
Moraine may have told a story or 2. I may be from there. I may be a descendant. The next part is where she sort of does this. She does the summary of the party. Ogier, Aes Sedai, Warder, and you?
Yeah, I liked this. Perrin asks her if she's following him. And why didn't you tell them what you saw? I'm just now noticing that she never answered the second question.
Nope.
But she does say, an Ogier is obviously an Ogier, and the others were not much more difficult to figure out. I managed a much better look inside Lady Alice's hood than Orban did, and her face makes that stone-faced fellow a warder. Does he always look like that? Or did he eat a rock for his last meal?
He always looks like that. Yeah.
That left only you. I do not like things I cannot account for. Once again, he considered tossing her over the side. Seriously this time.
Should have done it. Now, Perrin needs Fael. He needs someone with the organizational experience and social graces to make him successful.
Right.
They're definitely a team. So I wonder how much of his Ta'veren pulled her to him.
That's a good point. He really does need her in the later books. And I don't mind her as much as I mind, on the internet, there's a lot of hate for certain characters. One of them is Fael.
Yeah.
And she doesn't bother me so much. I feel like I sort of get her.
I totally get her. Yeah. My frustration in those segments I'm sometimes frustrated with Perrin.
Yeah.
And his actions, I'm never frustrated with Fael. I'm more frustrated with him and the way he acts towards her.
Just not getting it.
Yeah. And there was that great thing that was written on the internet that was basically a re-examination of Fail from her perspective and looking at what, how Perrin was reacting based on smells rather than actions.
Yeah.
And it was definitely something that got me. I read that pre-podcast, and it was one of the things that spurred me to think more about the podcast and look at characters from different perspectives, their own perspectives, and look at what they're doing rather than what they're saying or what other characters are thinking about them.
Right.
And so, I will say that one article spurred a big reread for me where I formed a lot of opinions that I have now about the characters.
That is kind of interesting. There's a thing to look out for in the future.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the whole relationship between Perrin and Fail. I'm super excited to see, what he thinks is happening versus, what she's doing versus what he's smelling. There's all these, different layers to those segments that I'm really excited to dig into.
I'll read a little snip about a paragraph down. You free a caged Aielman, hold a long talk with him, then help him chop up a dozen white cloaks into sausage. I assume you do this regularly. You certainly looked as if it were nothing out of the ordinary for you. I scent something strange in a party of travelers such as yours, and strange trails are what hunters look for. He blinked. There is no mistaking that emphasis. A hunter? You? You cannot be a hunter. You're a girl.
Mistake number 1.
Her smile became so innocent that he almost walked away from her. She stepped back, made a flourish with each hand, and was holding 2 knives as neatly as old Tom Maryland could have done it.
Perrin doesn't really know his knives.
It did sort of surprise me that he didn't think a hunter for the horn could be a girl. Why not? Especially in this world.
Yeah. He's got those Two Rivers prejudices.
I guess so. Maybe the hunters from old stories are, the stories that we have of them are few and far between, but I can't think of any female hunters. There's female heroes.
Are you sure Brigida was never a hunter?
I'm not 100% on that, but I can't think of any. I mean, Brigida's a hero. She's way better than a hunter.
Yeah, but one of the things that makes, a lot of those heroes were hunters. Hunters become heroes. There's a lot of adventures.
Yeah.
And they get incorporated into the tale of the Hero of the Horn.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing some of those people are, in fact, not only hunters of the horn, but also heroes.
It's sort of ironic.
Isn't it?
Not that anyone would ever be able to find it.
No, it's in the eye of the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's been found, so there's that.
You'd have to be able to channel away all that Sidene.
True.
To find it. And the only way to do that is to be someone powerful like Rand. And there aren't that many people who could.
A handful. Maybe some of Rand's closest competitors from this age might be able to do it.
Maybe a few of the Forsaken, but it burned Agenor out.
That's true. It does continue to surprise me, Thalaron, that the boys don't learn that ladies can kick ass. It just seems so obvious.
They get there eventually.
Yeah.
But it's, not here in the beginning.
There's Aes Sedai. There's Nynaeve. What do you want? I mean, I guess later we get a lot of the Aiel maidens and powerful female warriors.
We get a little more information about, just hunters, that there's probably about 2,000 of them.
Yeah. She said she kind of slipped into the crowd, and it's not like they're IDing people.
And she was the youngest. I have a hard time believing she was the youngest at 19. If there weren't any 16, 15-year-olds who were I'm going to go be a hunter.
I would have been way into that when I was 15 or 16.
So, and with that many people, there may have been some other young folks in there, but
yeah,
probably one of the few women.
I liked that she said this here reminded me of Swan a little when Fael says, "Nimble fingers and nimble wits will take you a good deal further than a sword and muscles. Sharp eyes help as well, but fortunately, I have these things. And modesty as well."
Yeah.
Says, mumbles.
You think you're the cat's meow.
I think that's right, Bambi. She's around 18.
I was going to say 21. I thought she was a little bit older than Perrin.
Is she older than Perrin? I'm a bit curious now. I'm going to
And he's 20.
take a look.
As we know, the boys are all 20 right now. No, you think she's younger?
She was born in 981.
And series starts in 998. We're probably in 999 by now. So she's, 18. Whenever her birthday is, she'll be 19.
Oh, this is where she asks if he's ever heard of Manetheren.
I've heard
of it, he said cautiously. She explains that there aren't just the ruins of old Manetheren up there. There are much older ruins, too. Perrin kind of validates her a little bit and saying, like, sure, there's rumors about treasure hidden up in the mountains.
Well, he's trying to distract her. He wants her to go off and
that's
hunt
true,
the thing.
too, yeah.
He's totally lying about that. He doesn't. There's no rumors of treasure. He just is confirming her suspicions, hoping she'll run off to
There's
the two
treasure
rivers.
up there.
Go for it.
Sure you want to be on this boat?
I do think it's funny that she ends up as like Queen of Manetheren, basically. She ends up there anyway, even though they're taking a diversion through Tyr.
Yeah.
And I also think here he tries to drop some knowledge on her. She's like, all right, farm boy, I'm going to teach you some stuff. And he's like, I'm going to teach you something. Manetheren was destroyed. It ain't even there anymore. So he's just sort of, there's a bit of a knowledge pissing contest between the two of them there. Where they're both trying to like prove that they know more than the other person about Manetheren.
It does seem a bit like that.
A lot of their relationship is unintentional competition.
Yeah, a little bit of one-upsmanship.
Definitely. Well, it's all about Fail wants someone who can prove that he's strong. So she presents a strong front and expects him to be at least that strong, if not stronger.
Nodding.
And when he just like gives in and is nice to her, that doesn't really, it doesn't fall into her cultural expectation of what men are supposed to be like.
Yeah.
But then she sees him do things like kill a bunch of white cloaks or be a leader and stuff like that. And
conduct a successful war to save her.
Exactly.
And all that. You were lucky Orban and Gan were injured fighting all those Aiel men, or they might well be aboard too. At least I will not get in your way, or try to take over, or pick a fight with the warder. Perrin growled disgustedly. We're just travelers on our way to Ilion, girl. What is your name? If I have to share this ship with you for days yet, I can't keep calling you girl. I call myself Mandarb.
Horsey.
He could not stop the guffaw that burst out of him. Those tilted eyes regarded him with heat. I will teach you something, farm boy. Her voice remained level, barely. In the old tongue, Mandarb means blade. It is a name worthy of a hunter of the horn. He managed to get his laughter under control.
It's worthy of a horse.
And hardly wheezed at all as he pointed to the rope pen between the masts. You see that black stallion? His name's Mandarb. The heat went out of her eyes, and spots of color bloomed on her cheeks. Oh. I was born Zareen Bashir, but Zareen is no name for a hunter. In the stories, hunters have names like Rogosh Eagle-Eye. I was trying to remember when I was reading this just before we started, Zareen has a meaning. Doesn't it mean like, it's like pretty flower or something?
I think it's based on a story of a beautiful woman who's basically a heartbreaker. Basically means like...
Oh, I was trying to remember, but a pampered lady?
A pampered lady,
Is that right? Thank you, Christine.
And she just hates it. Which, knowing her mother, I'm surprised she named her that. It's almost like, kind of reminds me of a boy named Sue. Like, I gave you a wimpy name just to make you tough. Moraine definitely chuckles when she hears her real name.
And then I just have the readout. Should I go for it?
Yeah.
She looks so crestfallen that he hastened to say, I like the name Zareen. It suits you.
Mistake number 2.
He doesn't know what it means, of course.
No, and she hates it.
The heat flashed back into her eyes, and for a moment he thought she was about to produce one of her knives again. It's late, Zareen. I want some sleep. He turned his back to start for the hatch that led below deck, prickles running across his shoulders. Crewmen still padded up the deck and back, working the sweeps. Fool. A girl will not stick a knife in me. Not with all these people watching. Would she? Just as he reached the hatch, she called to him. Farm boy. Perhaps I will call myself Fail. My father used to call me that when I was little. It means falcon. He stiffened and almost missed the first step of the ladder. Coincidence. He made himself go down without looking back toward her. It has to be. The passageway was dark, but enough moonlight filtered down behind him for him to make his way. Someone was snoring loudly in one of the cabins. Min, why did he have to go seeing things?
The Aielman in a cage was going to be a turning point in his life, and the Falcon was going to be a major thing in his life. They just happened to happen at the same time.
In the same evening.
And in some ways, you might say that she would have never followed them if he hadn't done what he did. She may have been interested, but she probably would have like let things go if he hadn't made such an issue.
Yeah. I mean, he needs Gaul later too.
Absolutely.
So that's really important. But he also needs Fail.
Desperately. He gains. Those are pretty much the two most important people in his life.
Yeah.
Other than maybe like Hopper.
I think he would have ended up with Berlain if he hadn't ended up with Fail. She certainly made a good run at it.
No, he never liked her.
Yeah.
Like, he was never even slightly tempted. And, like, it wasn't like, oh, if only, no, I'm dedicated to Fail. It was like, this woman's terrible.
She does kind of make a pass at all the young men.
Not at Matt. She takes one look at him and is like, nope, too much like me.
Not that one.
Walks away. And then she makes a real effort at Rand until...
Yeah, does anyone remember when and why Berlain turns away from her attentions from Rand to Perrin? I mean, there's the physical distance, but it's...
Oh, that's right. It was a bubble of evil where... And she goes running away, terrified, where the mirrors...
Yeah.
All the little... And he breaks them all and shatters them. Because a bunch of him step out of the mirrors, and she's just fucking terrified, and she never goes near him again.
Is that one? Is that all on the same night where it's Rand, Matt, Perrin, but it's perspective switches?
Yeah, and it's the bubble of evil hits all three of them. So yeah.
Perrin's axe attacks him.
Mm-hmm. Matt's playing cards come alive.
Yeah,
and Rand's mirrors come alive. So it's the same bubble of evil. Yeah, it starts with a cock crowing, and it's like that's what.
Is that in this book?
No. Shadow Rising.
Okay. Begin close to the beginning of the next one,
because that's after he's king of Tyr.
Yeah, this ends with
him
battle.
taking the sword. Yeah,
I have trouble remembering sometimes like what the end of each book. Yeah, because it's one long story to me.
Is like this is probably the most significant end. Like when he takes Kalendor at the end of this book for me and kills Baalzamon.
Yeah.
That's sort of the end of this first 3-book epic, and I definitely split the series in my head to pre-Kalendor and post-Kalendor. And I know that's at the end of Dragon Reborn. So that's a pretty big moment in terms of like
that's a
when
good way to
everything
find
else
it. Pre and post Kalendor. Pre and post King of Tyr.
Sure. And it's that first trilogy as a whole.
And then he's like, well, not a true emperor, but it's kind of the beginning, because he really becomes an emperor when he returns from the Aiel Waste with, the most powerful army in the world.
Totally.
Save maybe the Shan-Chan.
But we sort of like book 1 through 3 is the hero's journey. And, he becomes the hero. He gets the sword. He kills the bad guy. And then you get to book 4 and it's like, oh, this is something different.
This is like a fucking spirit quest.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, what I really liked about it.
And now he's a king of like multiple nations. He's becoming an emperor. He's getting, his channeling, because he gets Asmodean, and so his channeling starts to get better. Yeah. So all of these things, he goes from farm boy to hero, and that's where most stories end.
Yeah.
To be honest, like, and that's why I really love book 4, because
then
it's
to
what happens
emperor,
after,
and then emperor to god. I mean, that's why I'd put it in that category. A god, as in small g.
Yeah, I say hero to king, king to emperor, emperor to god.
Yeah.
Those are the 4 distinct phases that I would say all of the main characters go through.
More or less, yeah. I feel like Darth Rand is kind of it's the emperor phase.
That's definitely emperor, yeah.
Because, God doesn't happen until Veins of Gold.
Yeah, God is post Veins of Gold. Farm boy to king is first 3 books through Kalendor. King to emperor is Shadow Rising up until...
Yeah.
The king to emperor isn't quite as obvious. I would say that's when he starts taking the lands from other Forsaken. When he takes Andor, when he
Crown
takes
of Swords.
Yeah. The Crown of Swords. That's perfect. Yeah, Crown of Swords is when he gets that crown.
Yeah.
He becomes the emperor.
At that point, Tyr, Ilian, Cairhien, and the Waste. He's like, I'll let my girlfriend keep Andor.
I'll keep it open for her.
Oh, wait, does he do that with Cairhien as well? Wait, no, I think I'm thinking of when he takes Andor from Ravine, and he puts a throne beneath the throne so that he's not actually sitting on it.
No.
He's like, I'm just going to have this chair here near the throne.
But Elaine sees it as him like dominating the throne and like putting himself above it, and she really hates him for it. She's like, get out of my goddamn throne room. And it's like, okay, Elaine, go rule your country.
Here you go.
Yep.
Hey, you lost something. Found it.
Oh yeah, he puts the throne up on a pedestal, and she doesn't like that.
Oh.
Not below him, but just like,
wait, he puts the lion throne?
Yeah. So it's
on
above
a pedestal,
him.
so it's above him.
So because I don't know, but it's like preserving it for her type thing, and she wants to earn it in her own right. She doesn't want to be handed a throne by a man.
Right. Or anyone.
Sure, but especially not by Rand.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's okay with being handed Kyrie, because that's not her land. That's a conquering land. But she needs to earn her own country herself.
She does have like the bloodline rights, right?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's just that her mother did so many atrocious things to the nobles under the influence of Ravine.
Yeah, that's a lot of her trouble later.
She's lost a lot of her allies because the Trakan name is essentially dragged through the mud.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why compulsion's so terrible, because like people can make you think you're doing horrible things yourself, not at the behest of somebody else.
Yeah.
Keep the TV stuff out of the podcast, just because I kind of want the podcast to be something that can stand the test of time. And
I like that idea.
Speculating about stuff that may or may not happen. I mean, we're not really that interested in it, first of all.
That's maybe why I don't have much enthusiasm, because there's just nothing. Like, there's nothing to... Somebody's working on a script.
Right.
But what does that mean? I just don't want to get my hopes up. Also, I'm really get more excited about like what would happen to the podcast if there was like a major show.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm excited.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, you know, I don't really care if it's any good or not. Obviously, I want it to be good. And I wanted to bring in a lot of fans. But on some level, I just want it to happen, because I feel like once it comes out,
we'll just bring people to the books.
Yeah. It's going to, take what is already one of the most popular series of all time and drive people towards it. I just like seeing that somebody's communicating with us and saying that something's happening. We're moving towards resolution. Yeah. And
liked Watt way before it was cool.
I think we have the bona fides to prove that one.
We do.
I just think that the statement I hear is, I'm excited, but I hope they don't fuck it up. I'm excited, I can only say that and hear that so many times before I'm like, I know.
Let's see. Yeah.
And until there's more information, that's really all we can say.
No one will know exactly when you got the tattoo anyway,
Just make sure you get it not based on show art or show visuals. Because if you get a picture of Jon Snow on your butt and it's the actor, people are gonna be like, yeah, that was post show, not pre-show.
Yeah. I ran into something like that a while back where I was browsing through a fan art archive of someone who had done some Wheel of Time stuff, and I saw her Lord of the Rings stuff, and it was just portraits of the actors, and I was like, this seems weird.
Were they in costume?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, I get that.
That's a picture of a real person, though.
Right.
That's not really.
You're not using your imagination to come up with anything unique. You're just taking a picture of somebody and turning it into a piece of art.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when a movie comes out based on a book and they sell the action figures and they look like the actor, and I'm like, it's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been an action figure guy.
I had He-Man. But those were toys.
Well, yeah, when I was a little kid, but they're like adult men who collect action figures, you know.
No, there aren't.
Define adult. No, I don't knock it, especially since so huge a part of, well, I mean, a good portion of the geek community are those guys.
Honestly, I have a collection of dragon statues somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't really call anybody out for that. But yeah, for the most part, I just don't like to collect stuff anymore. So the idea of collecting figurines is just like, why?
Yeah. Yeah, I would probably get more into collecting stuff if I was staying in permanently.
And if I had space.
Or if I was sure about that. Yeah.
I collect hobbies. I don't collect objects. Although often each hobby has a few little pieces or items that go along with it. For example, podcasting. I have these microphones.
Well, sure.
Brewing, I have the brewing equipment. Pottery, I have a wheel. So I have a few like items like that. But each of those is like, they're useful tools, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad Bambi said that because I was starting to have the thought like, this barely sounds like a hobby. Like, this is actually a productive thing. Although I guess hobbies can be a productive thing. Like,
that's what I feel like
doing the podcast started as a hobby.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, I feel like watching TV is not a hobby.
Right. You're not really doing anything.
No.
I suppose you could call it that. What is the definition of a hobby?
I think of it as something productive you do, not necessarily for profit.
An activity done regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure. Or a small horse or pony. Number 2 definition.
I'll ride that definition right out of here. So, I mean, I guess TV does count technically, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I always thought of hobbies as more of like a productive thing, like the old guy that like builds incredibly elaborate train sets or
toothpick sculptures or gardening.
Sure.
I consider gardening a hobby.
I mean, like hiking can be a hobby. That doesn't produce anything.
Yeah, a pastime makes more sense for like TV watching or composting. Sure, you're producing.
Kind of.
At that point, you're almost transitioning into habit rather than hobby.
Right? I was going to say, you just kind of leave stuff in a box. I don't know if that's a hobby.
I mean, you turn it and rotate it and all that kind of stuff. Make sure the balance is right.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, especially like because if you're going to get into composting, you're going to get into gardening, probably. That's the point, right? Why make all the dirt if you're not going to use it?
And at that point, we're getting to things like, is washing your dishes a hobby? No, that's a habit.
Yeah.
A chore, almost. When I was really into composting, I was really into composting when I was really into brewing because I produced so many spent grains that I'd just be able to put them in the compost pile, and it's like putting cooked oatmeal in a compost pile. It breaks down so fast, and anything else we put in there was broken down almost instantly.
Yeah, I would say the contribution feels more like it falls within hobby as listening. Just listening, is that a hobby? Like listening to music, is that a hobby?
Versus like contributing to a podcast?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Webster's leaves an incredibly broad definition.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it falls under the broad definition of hobby. Do I consider it a hobby?
In the context sentence, underneath the first definition, it does say her hobbies are reading and gardening.
Reading, listening, watching, those all certainly fall under the pastime hobby label.
Yeah.
But when I say hobby, I'm thinking of something more active.
Yeah, I feel like this is too broad. Yeah. Like, is smoking pot a hobby? I guess. Like, you do that in your time off, but in your leisure time.
Sure, but that's definitely a habit more than a hobby.
Yeah.
It might help with creative hobbies, but I don't think it itself is a creative hobby. Unless you get really creative with your joints.
I've seen some pretty creative joints in my day.
Mm-hmm. But then the hobby's rolling joints, not smoking them.
Fair enough.
A habit is something you do without thinking, sure. But I definitely know some people that their hobby is their habit. A guy can sit down and whittle something without really thinking. He's been doing it for 100 years or whatever, and 50 years.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?